Blaise Pascal, one of the most brilliant minds of the 17th century, was a complex and paradoxical figure. A mathematical prodigy in his youth, he transformed into a religious mystic in his adulthood, setting aside his scientific talents in favor of theological contemplation. His short life, which lasted only 39 years, is a story of greatness and misery, a tale of a genius plagued by physical illness and spiritual turmoil, who ultimately sought peace in a truth beyond logic and science. Pascal was born in 1623 in Clermont-Ferrand, France. His father, Étienne Pascal, was a judge and an amateur mathematician who played a significant role in his son's education. Concerned about his son's fragile health, Étienne forbade him from studying mathematics, but this prohibition only ignited young Blaise's curiosity. At the age of 12, Pascal independently discovered many of the propositions of Euclidean geometry, convincing his father to let him pursue mathematics. At 16, Pascal wrote his famous theorem on hexagons inscribed in conic sections, which became known as Pascal's theorem. This theorem, one of the most beautiful results in projective geometry, showcased his geometric genius. At 19, he invented the first mechanical calculator to help his father with tax computations. Despite his scientific success, Pascal was spiritually restless. In 1654, he underwent a profound mystical experience that changed his life forever. This experience, known as the Night of Fire, was a direct, personal encounter with God, not a philosophical conclusion. He wrote the details of this revelation on a piece of parchment, which he sewed into the lining of his coat and carried with him for the rest of his life. In this note, his memorial, he speaks of the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and not of the philosophers and the learned, emphasizing joy, certainty, and tears of joy. This moment was the turning point that pushed Pascal from the world of pure reason toward a mysticism of the heart. After this transformation, Pascal abandoned many of his scientific activities, viewing them as futile pursuits born of pride. He joined the ascetic Jansenist community at the Port Royal Convent and adopted a life of austerity and prayer. He believed that physical suffering was a way to draw closer to God and is said to have worn a spiked belt against his skin to ward off worldly pleasures and remember the suffering of Christ. His chronic illness was integrated into this mystical worldview. He saw his pain not as a misfortune, but as a divine trial. The famous story of his solving the cycloid problem during a severe toothache perfectly illustrates his internal conflict. He only allowed himself to think about mathematics when the relief from his pain felt like a sign of divine approval. During this period, Pascal wrote his two great literary works, the Lettres Provinciales or provincial letters and the Pensées that means thoughts. The Provincial Letters is a series of witty and eloquent letters defending the Jansenist movement against attacks from the Jesuits. His immortal work, the Pensées, is the direct product of this mystical life. It is not merely a philosophical argument but a collection of intuitive flashes and profound reflections on the contradictions of the human condition. His famous line, "The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing," captures the essence of his mystical worldview. A truth that is understood not through logic, but through intuition, faith, and a surrender of the heart. Pascal's wager, one of the most famous sections of the Pensées, is a pragmatic argument for belief in God. Pascal suffered from numerous illnesses in his final years. He died in 1662 at the age of 39. Pascal's legacy is multifaceted. In mathematics, he is known as one of the founders of probability theory along with Fermat and a pioneer in projective geometry. In physics, his work on atmospheric pressure and hydrostatics is foundational. In literature and philosophy, the Provincial Letters and the Pensées establish him as one of the greatest writers and thinkers in French history. The life of Pascal is a tragic example of a genius who wrestled with suffering and doubt. A man who could have been one of the greatest mathematicians in history ultimately chose the path of mysticism and faith. He remains an eternal symbol of the conflict between the head and the heart, between the greatness of the human mind and the misery of its existence in the search for meaning beyond the material world. Nevertheless, his works, both scientific and literary, continue to be inspiring and influential, immortalizing him as one of the most prominent figures in the history of Western thought.